Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be painting Winter Beauty on an 18 by 24 canvas I primed once with acrylic gesso. Now I'm going to paint most of the canvas using slate gray, and I'm also going to be using one of my large filbert brushes for this. It's a number 50. After getting my brush a little bit wet, I'm going to scoop up the gray paint and just start pulling it around the bottom of the canvas, working my way up. And I'm going to use less paint as I go up towards the top of the canvas because I want it to be thinner there and lighter in color, because I'm going to be coming in with some other colors such as cerulean blue, neon orange, and white. Now the next color I'm going to use is my titanium white, and I'm using this with a clean brush. I want to go over the white canvas with this shade of white specifically because it will make a really pretty color when I add my neon orange. So I'm going to apply most of it on top of the canvas and then work the rest of that paint out of my brush into the light gray where I left off. Okay, I'll quickly go over the colors I'm using again. Cerulean blue and neon orange or luminous orange by Holbein. Please look below the video for a full list of colors and brushes in the description box. I've also got a number 10 oval stipple brush, and I'm going to tap a little bit of titanium white with my neon orange and start blending that in to the wet paint on the canvas. Now don't worry, if your paint is already dried on your canvas, you can still apply the white and the orange. It'll still look really pretty, but it doesn't matter either way. You can apply it to wet paint or dry paint. I'm going to make it patchy-like and stipple a little bit and pull my brush. So a few different brush strokes here. Remember, don't cover the entire top of the canvas. You need some white bare areas showing so that we can come in with our blue. I'm going to wash my brush out first before I go into the blue. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white and take just a little bit of that blue to tint my white, and it'll be a nice bright blue. And I'm going to go in between the orange and the gray and then start to slightly overlap part of the orange areas. That will give me a really smoky, almost violet color. And I'll be using a dry round mop brush just to blend the harsh lines and streaks and make it look really soft after I'm done this step. So I'm taking one of my dry round mop brushes, no paint on it at all, and I'm going to very, very lightly blend the two colors together. Wherever I have some harsh lines or streaks, I'm going to go over them and blend them out so that it looks really soft. Okay, now we're going to start working on our road, and I'm going to be using black and a number 12 filbert brush. I'm going to take a little bit of my cerulean blue and my black and even a little bit of white that might be left there on my plate. So we're kind of getting a dark gray color tinted with a bit of that blue. And I'm going to start on either side of the canvas. So this is going to have a dramatic perspective and make us feel like we're in the foreground driving on that road, heading off into the distance. So I'm going to do it wider towards us in the foreground, fill that all in, and then it's going to start to curve and get smaller and narrower and windy towards the horizon line, okay? You can make yours as curvy as you want or less curvy. This is just how I'm doing mine today, but I've got quite a few different tutorials that are similar. So if you want more ideas and techniques for how to paint a road going and disappearing off into the distance, check out my playlist and links for those videos below. After filling in my road, I'm going to come in with my dagger angle brush. I'm going to take some white without any water, and I'm going to start to pull and drag very lightly, not applying much pressure at all, making it look patchy, and dragging and pulling on an angle, giving the mountains the snow-capped look. So you don't need to have any water on your brush for this. Like I said, you really just want to have white paint, and I like to use titanium white because it's the brightest, and I think it's going to really show up on this gray and blue and light peach background. It's going to look really pretty. So after, I'm going to go on the other side and add just a little bit of a shadow, a little bit more of a shadow with a gray. This might get covered up after I add my trees, but I want to go ahead and do that and include that in this video so that you guys can learn just a little bit more on how to add some shadows to your mountains. Now, turning my brush the other way with my white paint again, I'm going to tap multiple times at the base kind of and above, right down to where we see the highway, the road disappear. And this is going to give us those trees that are way off in the distance, no detail. So here I'm just taking a little bit more of the gray color and demonstrating for you guys how you can apply a little bit of a shadow to make your mountain stand out even more. But like I said, it may be covered up with all the trees and forest I'm going to add eventually. But there you go. It's another little lesson in there for you guys. And then I'm just going to start to add more and more white just to brighten the mountains up more. I'll use the same technique and add more and more trees down here and on either side. The next color I'm going to be using is white again, but I'm going to be taking some light blue violet or light ultramarine blue. This is a very complementary color to the peach we have going on in this painting, in this landscape. So with my number 11 filbert brush, I'm going to take both those colors and I'm going to start coming in with highlight on the road and the snow banks on either side. I'm only going to bring it up to a certain height, and then the rest of that's going to be some shadows in the forest where we're going to have our trees starting from. So I'll add a little bit more blue, sometimes more white, giving this different lighting all over. So you don't want it to be exactly the same everywhere because of all the trees. The highlights and shadows will be different all over. So try not to have one solid color anywhere in your paintings. So after adding another light dry brush highlight on the road, I'm going to come in with black and add the edges on my road on either side. I'll be adding a little bit of snow and ice on the edge of the right side of the road as well, but first I want to just really get a clean line of black in here and have it transition to those lighter snowy shades, the blue and the white, gray. Okay, for the next step in this painting, with a clean brush, my filbert brush again, I'm going to take more titanium white and my light blue violet. I'm going to turn my brush on the edge and start tapping in and building up a few more layers of my forest in the distance. I'm then going to start to add and filter a bit of that light blue violet around the edges of the painting, leading up to the corners of the sky. My brush is all dry for this. It's just a scumble, thin filter dry brush effect. Now I'm going to be switching over to another dry mop brush, and I'm going to just softly blend that light blue into part of the peach on the very top of the canvas. And then I'm going to start applying some foliage for the first layer of our trees on the side and the foreground. So I'll be tapping into white and some of my light blue violet. So blending it and then tapping to keep that shape in my brush. And I'm just going to start in the distance, little taps, making it look farther away. And we've got all those layers really building up, helping to build up this landscape, foreground to distance. And what I really like about this painting is it reminds me, the mountains in the distance really remind me of growing up in the Rockies and driving home from road trips and always seeing those snow-capped mountains and just how beautiful they look. So this kind of has a special place in my heart, this painting. In fact, all my winter paintings lately are inspired by my personal experience of where I grew up and the gorgeous landscape all around me. So I'm going to continue building up these trees, and I'm adding a little bit of gray in with my blue and my white to make some darker shades, but nothing too dark. You definitely don't want anything black at this point or even close to black. We really want a soft snow pastel colored palette right now, and then keeping the road dark, and our tree trunks and our branches are going to be dark, and that's going to give us that really beautiful a really beautiful contrast in this painting. So I'm going to go over and add some more highlights on the road. So what we want to do is make the road look kind of frosty, maybe a little bit shiny, and add some soft highlights. So my brush is never wet with water when I'm doing this. I'm always using just a little bit of paint so that it looks powdery and soft. All right, I'm going to come in with some more highlights now in the distance again. So I'm going to just pull and slide with my brush, brightening this area up around the road, and then I'm going to turn my brush the other way again and tap in some more trees in front of those other ones, and then I'm going to softly kind of just wiggle and squiggle my brush around to make it look blurry. So it's important to remember in your paintings to not have everything in full focus. Choose a few areas of your painting that are going to be out of focus and slightly blurry. So just taking straight titanium white, there's no water on my brush, and I will let you guys know every time I'm using water. I don't use water very often, so just titanium white. And now I'm going to add the line for my road, and it's going to go, it's very exaggerated, the perspective of this painting. So the line looks like it's going and veering off to the left side of the road. So I did that on purpose. You guys can make yours in the middle if you want. It just depends on, we're obviously in the right lane where we're driving. So that's why we're seeing the line more towards the left side, if that makes sense. And you want it to disappear off into the distance and be a little bit wider and clearer here in the foreground towards the bottom of the canvas. Now this is totally optional, but I want the side of my road to look like it has a little bit of snow just on the edge, little bits of snow, drifts of snow. So I'm just using my brush like a palette knife and with no water at all, just a little bit of white or blue, just dragging, barely touching the canvas to create little bits of snow on the side. Okay, time for my favorite part, painting the trees. And I'm going to keep using this angle brush. I'm going to take my cerulean blue with my black, mix them both up, and get a nice amount on the very end of my brush, which I'm going to be using most of. So I'm going to start right at the top of the canvas. You can start yours at the bottom, doesn't really matter. So this line that we have here in between our road and where our trees are starting, you don't really want to go over that, but it's going to be kind of hard not to. And in fact, I go over it a little bit, so I'll show you guys how you can get rid of those edges on the bottom of your tree trunks. We're just going to go over them slightly with a little bit of white and blue later on, but don't worry about that for now. Just concentrate on painting different widths of tree trunks, different angles, have them leaning, have a few straight up and down. This is really going to give you that natural flow to your forest and add a lot of character and personality to your painting. I will be using a little bit of water as these trees get further away in the distance and won't be as dark. It will also help me pull the paint out of my brush, but I'm only going to use the tiniest bit of water, so 95% paint and 5% water, just to give you guys an idea. Now later on, when I use my liner brush, I will be using some more water. Liner brushes really need help pulling the paint out, especially when you're using a liner brush to create wispy and delicate looking branches on your trees. So I'll show you guys later when I come in with my branches, but I'm going to hop over to this side now and start adding some trees on this side. I want to have a really wide, thick one here, a big tree on this side, and then I'm going to have another one coming in front of it, right off the canvas and really leaning. I like to have my trees leaning in towards the center of interest in my paintings. I think that really helps to frame in the painting and draw our eyes in, making it even more focused on what's going on in the center of the painting and making us wonder what lies ahead as we're driving on this road. So I'm going to keep coming in, pulling line after line, different directions, and letting that paint work out on my brush. I'm not applying too much pressure. If I push too hard to try to get that paint out, what's going to happen is my tree trunks are going to look way too thick. So remember that in the distance, they're going to appear smaller, right? And the ones here closer to us in the foreground will be our biggest ones, thickest and darkest in color. Okay, now it's time to clean up the edges, the bottom base of our trees. We're going to come up over top with more white and blue because this little bank of snow is in front and those trees are behind. So we need to put them back there. Again, just by doing this, it's a quick and super easy and simple fix. I'm going to hop over to the right side and do the same thing over there, and then we'll start working on our branches. Now there is one step I almost forgot. I don't want to skip this step. Just before we apply our branches, I'm going to use my brush flat like a palette knife again, and I'm just going to lightly drag up a few of my tree trunks, you'll see in just a moment, and make it look like there's a little bit of snow on part of the tree trunks. So I'm going to use a little bit of white and blue for this. Later on, I'm going to come in and add a little bit more black on the left side, just to balance out where I may have added a little bit too much and lost that contrast of the dark tree trunks that are really important to me in this painting. But this is a really good demonstration where you guys can learn how to apply snow on tree trunks like this. And for summertime or spring paintings and those moss covered trees, this is the same technique that I use. So you would just use a different color and it would look like green moss on the tree. So there's a little tip for you guys. I'm going to finish up some of the tree trunks on this side, and then our next step is going to be our branches. I'm going to apply 3 or 4 thicker branches just with this brush, and then I'm going to switch over to one of my long liner brushes. Be sure to use a liner brush that you're comfortable with, even a round brush, but I want to paint really delicate, thin looking branches for this painting, so that's why I'm going to be using one of my fine long liner brushes. And I'm going to make sure that I have a lot of water in my brush because I want that paint to flow really easily out of my brush so that I don't have to apply a lot of pressure. So I'm going to use a lot of paint as well. I'm going to start coming in with thicker branches, wiggling and pulling, dragging and wiggling all at the same time. That's going to give us those natural looking branches that are really crooked and have a lot of character. Okay, so after adding a whole bunch of branches and a few more skinny little tree trunks way back here in the distance. I'm going to wash this brush out and switch over to one of my favorite brushes for creating treetops and foliage. And it's my 1-inch oval mop brush. I'm going to make sure it's dry. Don't dunk your mop brushes in water because it's going to wreck the shape and it's going to ruin the way your bushes and your trees look. So dry, straight to paint, and I'm going to use quite a bit of paint for this. I really want these branches to feel like they're getting weighed down and they're heavy from all the snow on them. So I'm using a combination of my blue violet and my titanium white. So wiggling and pushing so that I have the end of my brush loaded with paint, and I'm going to just tap very lightly and see, it just makes like the perfect looking snow covered branches. So this is the first step in creating the foliage for my trees and little bushes, and then eventually I'm going to add a few more colors, shades. I might even add a little bit of my cerulean blue later on, we'll see, and just really tie all these colors in together. So at the very end of the video, you'll see me adding just a little bit of that peach color to some of the snow in the trees as well. And I'm going to continue where it's brighter in the background. I'm going to need to use blue because the white won't show up as much, and it would make more sense for it to be a little bit darker and in shadow against that bright sky. And then as we get lower down where it's a little bit darker, I can come in and add more white. So we've got a whole bunch of snow-covered branches. This painting is really starting to come together. I will be doing a few more layers, but before that I'm going to apply another dry brush over my road just to brighten it up a little bit more, because after a while the acrylic paint dries darker, so just keep that in mind. But here I've got a little bit of my cerulean blue, white, gray, and blue violet, so I'm going to add a few little taps in on either side and then apply it down on the road as well. Just taking my larger filbert brush here. It's a little bit damp and not watered down though, just like the tiniest bit of water in there just to help blend that out and give it a very thin filtered look and hazy look over the road. I'm going to go back in with my liner brush, black and cerulean blue, and add my last layer of branches in, and just really make a few of these branches stand out and look like they're going in front, so that we have that layered effect that really gives us that sense of perspective and makes them feel like they're closer to us and all the other ones are further away. So once I apply the last branch right here, I'm going to use another brush, and it's a little fan brush. It's a dry brush. I'm not going to get my fan brush wet. I'm going to go right into titanium white, and I'll show you in just a moment. And it's right here. It's a number 2 size, I believe, but you can use any size that you want or feel comfortable with. If you guys don't have a fan brush, you can always just use a filbert brush. So I really want these branches to stand out. So I'm going to use quite a bit of paint to do this and to make lots of little taps here and there to give movement and make it look like there's a lot of other branches, little branches amongst those larger ones, if that makes sense. So I'm going to apply a thin layer as we get further in the distance as the paint works out of my brush. So I'll start adding the majority of the paint in the foreground, and then as it works out of my brush, like I said, I'm just going to go into those ones that are further away, and I'll just have the right amount to create those softer looking trees in the distance. It's time to start adding our final highlights for this painting. I'm going to come in with a little bit of white and add a little line way back there where that road starts to disappear. And then I'm going to start to come around that corner and add more white. I'm going to create some really bright, pretty highlights. Just still using this fan brush. You can use any brush you want for this though. And after I apply the highlights with the white, a little bit more here on the road and the sides, I'm going to come in with my final highlight, tinting my white with a little bit of that neon orange, and just going to do a few brush strokes of that. Less is more. I really want to have that warmth up in the sky and the cool winter tones, that blue violet down here below, but I think that it would just be nice to have a little hint of that warmth way back there where the road disappears. So you'll see that in just a moment. I will be using a round brush for that. Okay, so it's time to add that light peach highlight right here. And I apologize, I mentioned I used a round brush before. You can use a round brush for this, but I actually am just using my liner brush. So you can say I didn't use a whole lot there. I applied just a little bit, but that little bit of warmth, peachy color in the center there really makes a big difference. I'm going to add a little bit of black to my peach and add a few softer tones for some more little branches back here. And I'm going to add just a little bit of white to the line in my road before I call this painting done. I'll just add a few more highlights and then finally come in with some black, straight full-on black on the bottom left of my road, and possibly a little bit more on the tree trunks and the other side of the road. So just bringing everything together with those final highlights and shadows for contrast. And this has been one of my favorite winter paintings I've done and got to share with you guys. I'm so excited to see your versions of this and have you guys all here today joining me in my studio for this special winter painting. So if you guys enjoy painting winter as much as I do, check out my playlist below, specifically winter and Christmas paintings. There's something for everybody. I hope you guys have fun painting this one. Be sure to share it on our Facebook group and have a wonderful day. Enjoy your winter, and I'll see you all soon in another video.